Practices for both the East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl are in the books. I'm back home, and I have some of my favorite fits at each position on the roster that may make sense for the Dolphins come April.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special shout out and welcome to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I'm home, obviously. It's Saturday. We usually don't do Saturday programming, but we didn't do Friday programming because I had quite the travel day yesterday. Getting from Mobile back home, full day affair, quick turnaround as far as Thursday and the end of practices, and I had a chance on the plane to kind of collect my thoughts on a lot of the players that I saw between my time in Dallas at the East-West Shrine and in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. And what I wanted to do was kind of present to all of you on this program the list of like my favorite fit based off of what I saw / what I know about these prospects for the Miami Dolphins roster. This is not a mock draft that went up today over on Touchdown Miami. It was the 10 pick full 7-round mock draft of only players that participated in the Shrine or the Senior Bowl. But this is favorite players and fits at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, all the way down the list, with the objective being starting to whittle this list, this overwhelming list. And it doesn't get into the opportunity cost or the discussion of how many players and certain picks you are going to be able to make as far as like if everybody that I like his favorite fits is a first-round player, you're probably only going to get one of those guys, maybe two at best. So we'll get into that at the end of the end of the show as well, as far as the outlook for April. And let's start with the offensive side of the ball. And quarterback, limited options, right? Shedeur Sanders does get the call out here, although this inclusion does come with an asterisk that he did not participate with anything that took place. Do I think it's likely that Shedeur Sanders is going to be available at the point in which the Dolphins come on the board with the 13th overall pick? No, I don't think that's likely at all. So I think it's kind of a moot point, but he is the player who I think has the vision and rhythm as a passer and timing and operates his game a way in which you can see it making a direct correlation and fit within how the passing game is currently structured in Miami. I think a lot of the other options, whether that's Jalen Milroe from Alabama, as far as like a high tools guy, is somebody who there would have to be a dramatic deviation and departure, or you'd have to bring him in and develop him and have a different kind of vision for him early on if he were to contribute for your team. My honorable mention is Jackson Dart. So that's a Senior Bowl and a Shrine Bowl inclusion at this position. Dart has the tools. Dart seems to be getting some gas coming out of this event. I know ESPN polled a number of executives, and none of them seemed to feel as though he was playing himself into the first-round conversation. He's day 2 quarterback with really likable tools. My concern with Dart is how quickly you could groom him to be ready to process all the information that's required to be processed in this offense that Mike McDaniel runs relative to what he was asked to do at Ole Miss. And I know some of the executives in that ESPN piece that just dropped this morning disclosed that like from an NFL perspective, the Ole Miss offense is a mess. And that's a quote, a mess, as far as vocabulary and how they simplify things. So highly tooled, yes. Gifted as a passer, yes. Would I draft him at 48 if I were Miami? I wouldn't. Somebody probably will in that stratosphere. Now, at running back, a couple of big-bodied backs get the call here. The first shout goes to Devin Neal from Kansas, who's a really gifted and creative runner. He's got really good, like, open air vision and feel, but he came into the Senior Bowl at 220 pounds and then, like, ran routes in the passing game really well. A guy like that is a different kind of body type and skill set. That's going to be a big theme for a number of the positions that we go through here. Having a different element to your game to continue to diversify either the offense or the defense or the position rooms that you have is a really attractive proposition to me. So Devin Neal is a 220-pound back who can run routes, is physical, can run between the tackles. Gets the shout as my favorite fit for the Dolphins offense amongst both of the Shrine and Senior Bowl rosters. The honorable mention goes to University of Miami running back Damian Martinez, who did really good in pass protection stuff, obviously runs really hard. Don't think he has great open field speed. And here's the thing about running backs at this event, right? It's really hard to evaluate how a player at the running back position plays, knowing full well he's never going to get tackled and go to the ground because they don't want you to go to the ground because they don't want anybody getting hurt because it's an all-star game. It's supposed to be a showcase of your talent, not an actual physical contact setting. A wide receiver, the theme goes back to diversification of skill sets. When you consider Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Malik Washington and Braxton Berrios, and those are arguably the top 4 names on the depth chart, or they were at some time this season. Sans when Odell Beckham kind of existed for you, but that's a whole other conversation. Jack Betch from TCU from the Senior Bowl is my favorite. This 6'2", 215-pound wide receiver, really nasty on tape in the run game. Seeing him run routes, I actually thought he represented himself even better running routes in person than what I was expecting based off tape, and I knew I liked him coming into this event. Do I think he's available at 98? Probably not. So this is where when we get to outlook for April, we're going to start to have conversations about numbers of players available in certain ranges and what that should mean for your draft strategy and all that kind of stuff. But Betch, really good asset in the run game, vertical receiving skill set, really good hands, strong after the catch, runs more routes than you give him credit for. Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, also from the Senior Bowl, is my honorable mention here. This is 6'4", 215 pounds. And what stood out to Higgins, stood out to me about Higgins at the Senior Bowl was just there's a level of twitch that I wasn't expecting for a player of his stature. And anytime you get that, as far as like route running and obviously as a monster catch radius, as you would with a 6'4" type of frame at the wide receiver position, you're standing out. But again, at 215 pounds, a little bit of a body presence difference than what was showcased really the last 2 years for the Dolphins at wide receiver. Tight end, we're going to put the full homer hat on here. There's no shame about it. Mason Taylor, favorite fit at tight end. I do think of the players that participated in this event, Taylor's probably the most well-rounded skill set at the tight end position. And I think he's fairly ready to contribute in a passing game level as well, like from the jump. Most tight ends, there is a developmental curve that is required, and I think Taylor, as a blocker, may experience some of that early on. But I think he's a better blocker than Elijah Arroyo. I think he's a better receiver than some of the blockers that I really like Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech out of this group. He's the player who does the thing that we talked about as far as those tight ends who are in attendance that I think we need with that Y position in the offense, which is kind of blurs the lines between a Y and an F. I think Taylor does it the best. So he's my favorite fit. And then Oronde Gadsden Jr., or the second, from the Shrine Bowl is my honorable mention. It's at tight end. 2 Dolphins alumni have their sons and both playing tight end position. We're just going to lean into the bet. Now I have offensive line, and then I have the entire defensive side of the ball. We're getting into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins, summarizing the East-West Shrine and the Senior Bowl with my favorite fits at each position for the Dolphins. That's coming your way next. Stick with us. If you're looking for tickets for your next big event, or maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week, whether it's concert, comedy show, or sports game, find the right ticket at the right price without the headache. With Game Time. With Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you, it works with Game Time Picks. The app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. If you're ready to make your next event even better, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Offensive line. It's a really hard group, and it wasn't as hard as it could have been. Because Armand Membu did not participate in the event. He came in and got weighed in and then left. And it was reported as a stomach bug for Armand Membu. But he'd probably he would have at minimum been the honorable mention listing for me had he participated. But because he didn't, and that's the whole thing, it's like I had to physically see you in person for it to count as far as being a favorite fit. Gray Zabel, North Dakota State, left tackle from North Dakota State, comes into the Senior Bowl, plays both guard spots and center, blows the doors off. It was the national team practice player of the week for any position. And he worked with Coach Lem from the Dolphins, who's the assistant offensive line coach. He was the national team's offensive line coach, and worked hands-on with him every single day. And you just saw a player who I think really transcended the level of competition question that exists with him from coming from the SCS level. You saw a position scheme change question with him that was alleviated. And you contrast that to how like Wyatt Milam from West Virginia handled it, where both of those guys were left tackles that had some length questions, kind of weighed in the same weight range. Zabel, I think, much more developed in the lower half as far as his lower body strength. It showcased and allowed him to play with a lot more control. And I thought he had better hands. So as a player who could play left guard, center, right guard, tackle in a pinch, Dolphins love all that kind of stuff, right? And they worked hands-on with him all week long. How do you not pick him? So Gray Zabel, because most of the other options, whether it's Milam or Connerly or Membu, and Josh Connerly from Oregon's my honorable mention here. Although I really like Carson Vincent. I know we kind of gassed him up on the last show that I did on Thursday night. The challenge is the projection. You're drafting tackles to play guard in this offense, where I think Gray Zabel showcased arguably better inside at guard against better competition in drills that are skewed with the deck stacked against him. Where like Connerly, Belton, Vincent, those guys didn't play inside throughout the course of this week. Josh Connerly did play over at the right side on right tackle. Did not look the same way he did at left tackle. I think as a natural left side of the line of scrimmage player. He's an electric talent. I think he's going to be a good tackle for somebody. So he gets a shout out as the honorable mention here. But just because Zabel, the projection inside is a lot cleaner, a lot more dynamic, is my pick there for offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, Kenneth Grant at defensive tackle from the Shrine Bowl technically gets the same asterisk that Shedeur Sanders did, where he didn't participate in any events. He was out there holding bags on the first day of practice. From a math changer's perspective, I think he is an interior defensive lineman and nose tackle who can play in the A-gaps, who has a ton of ceiling as a pass rusher, but is a math changer for what it means for your front and how you can fit the run because of, I think, how good he is as a presence in the A gaps. So because of that off the tape, not obviously based off of how well he held bags at the Shrine, Kenneth Grant gets my favorite fit there for the Dolphins, where Darius Alexander from the Senior Bowl takes home the honorable mention here. And some people have been so bold as to point to the parallels to Chris Jones, and I see it from a build perspective. Do I think that's probably very aggressive? Yes, I do. He had 7.5 sacks his last 2 seasons at Toledo. Obviously, that's not everything. He did get a lot of double teams and extra attention. But man, like, he came in and was good the first day. And then in talking to him, you kind of hear him talk about, like, go back, watch the tape, study the guys that I'm going against. And he got better throughout the week because he crafted his pass rush play. Like, that's really high level stuff as far as, the IQ of playing the position. So the fact that he did that, Darius Alexander from Toledo, probably played himself in the middle of day 2. Miami's probably only going to get 2 cracks at him. They wouldn't take him at 13. I can't imagine that they would. So you're probably, that would be a player you're probably looking at 2 swings of the battle. On the outside, on the defensive line, Shedeur, he's a top 10 player for me in the class. I thought he showcased himself to be the most unique and rare blend of talents and traits at the Senior Bowl. For the 2 days of practice that he had, there was a lot of flashes of dominance in a lot of different ways. And unique player and build at 6'5", 281 pounds with an 83-inch wingspan. That's a stupid amount of length, stupid amount of explosiveness at 280 pounds. You could play him up to 290, 295. You could probably have him play in the 270s, and you could do a lot of different things. He could be a lot of different kinds of solutions for problems. And that's a lot of what coaching is, right? Is finding as many solutions to problems presented on game day. Shedeur provides those avenues on the edge. The other player I really like on the edge group for the Dolphins in particular is Jared Ivey, 285-pound Ole Miss defensive end. The versatility that he showcased to rush from a 2 to play in a base end spot and a kick inside and rush on the interior gaps. Dolphins move the personnel around a lot. And this is, Anthony Weaver talked about at the beginning of last season, going back to training camp, about the amount of depth that they wanted to have on the defensive line and how they were going to use that as a weapon. And I don't think they had that, particularly on the edge down the stretch, because they didn't have Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. So there's a whole conversation to be had about moving on from one of those players, or how much can you trust those players? But that's beyond the spirit of this, which is just recognizing that I think Shedeur and Jared Ivey would be 2 really outstanding fits as 280-plus pound defensive linemen who have enough ability to threaten from the edge and versatility to play all over the front. That's the kind of stuff I think you're looking for to really create as many problems as possible and make it difficult to solve all the personnel challenges that your defense presents to opposing teams. At linebacker, this one was tough because I wanted to give Kane Medrano from the Shrine some love. But he's a 219-pound linebacker who covers crazy well. He's a special teams demon. But I don't think he's anywhere close to being a starter at the NFL level. And when I'm looking at the Dolphins and their roster needs, and I'm acknowledging they need a second starter opposite Jordan Brooks, one way, shape, or form, whether that comes from Tyrell Dotson or the draft or another free agency addition, like however that comes about, they need another starter. So I picked 2 players that I think have starting profiles as players. 2 day 2 linebackers from the Senior Bowl. Demetrius Knight, still my favorite fit. He's a little bit more of a downhill thumper. I thought you really saw him in the Senior Bowl with the one-on-one environment. That's not really suited to his strength to play in isolation and have to cover the entire width of the field and the entire depth of the field against running backs coming out of the backfield with all that extra space as a tall 6'2", 245-pound linebacker. It's not really his game. I think Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon, who's the honorable mention, is a little bit better in that regard. And I thought that showcased in the one-on-ones. But Knight still very much showcased the instinctive, like the play recognition. He's a super smart player at 245 pounds, as you'd expect. There's quite the physical element to his game that he couldn't fully showcase because of what the setting is skewed to be towards at an all-star event. And I give my extra, I guess I've got 4 here because Kane Madrano we already mentioned as well, but the other honorable mention would be Smile Mondon from Georgia. 230 pounds. He came in at 229, a little bit bigger than I think I expected. And he did really well in the pass coverage one-on-ones against the tight ends and running backs too. So linebackers a good looking group as far as the all-star events for options, whether you're looking for a special teams role player type or you're looking for, hey, this guy might potentially be a starter type. And now I have the secondary and then the outlook for April. That's coming your way next year on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners, big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of a $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so in the secondary, we're getting... This is our third Shrine Bowl shout out, and he also gets an asterisk. It's Shavon Revel, corner from ECU, who's coming off of a September season-ending knee injury. Understandably, was an interview-only participant in the process. It's unfortunate timing for Revel, and I think unless he were to slide into the second round, it's a player to be really leery about if I were the Dolphins, just because you feel like if you're going to compete in transition, you want to take authentic best players available type thing and just advocate for collecting talent. But you'd also love for these guys to come in and be ready to play and contribute. And Revel should theoretically be far enough removed from that. But it's an extra layer to his game that I think complicates, like if I was going to stack a board and pick a player, I just have a little bit more pause in that regard. Now, the runner-up was tough, or the honorable mention was tough. I went with Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky because I think he's a good tackler, especially specifically when he's healthy. He missed almost half the season this year with a shoulder injury. Was out there at the Senior Bowl, was really competitive in coverage. He's got light, quick feet. I think he's got good eyes. He's a zone and zone match type of cornerback with really good ball skills. He's got good ball production. He finished his 1 year as a full-time starter with 5 interceptions. So that all profiles very, very well for Maxwell Hairston. Darian Porter was the other player I considered from Iowa State. He was tracked on the GPS at the Senior Bowl. I believe he was the only player in any of the 3 days of practice to surpass 22 miles per hour as like a 6'2" big, long corner. And then the safety group, for as good as the safety class is in the draft, pretty limited options as far as players who were there and participated in the events that gets you excited. I went with Billy Bowman as my favorite, and he's another player that's got big-time ball production. Missed tackles are a problem for him, but he came in at 200 pounds, and man, he was really feisty. He was really scrappy. He talked a lot, and the fact that he has ball production and came in bigger than we thought, at least from a size perspective, he's probably a late day 2, early day 3 type of option. That's one I've got a star next to just because I want to go back and reassess that tape, because he's also in that stratosphere where the Dolphins might get more than 2 bites of the apple to try to get him. Maxon Hook from Toledo, who I think is a high floor player, not a super high ceiling player, is my honorable mention. He's also from the Senior Bowl. So you had from the Shrine 4 standout players. 3 of them did get asterisks because they did not participate in the actual practices at these events. But the talent, a lot of talent over the last week that I had a chance to go down and see. And the challenge is now, and this is why my focus is largely going to be how much draft capital can the Dolphins collect between now and the start of the draft? And what players could you move, whether that's 10 or somebody else? Could you trade down depending on who's there at pick number 13? Is there a player that's too good to be true that's there at 13? If so, you take that player. If not, you'd love to get more bites of the apple because realistically, like Shedeur Sanders, I think is going to be gone by your pick, but Jackson Dart's probably like you would have to spend 48 to draft him, assuming that he gets to 48 based off of the tools that he has and the scarcity of the quarterback class. I think running backs, you get plenty of swings. I think you could probably get 3 swings of the bat at either Devin Neal or Damian Martinez at a minimum. But Jack Betch and Jaden Higgins, like Betch, I think you get 2 swings of the bat at. Higgins, maybe you get 3 at, and maybe he's there in the 3rd round for you. Mason Taylor, I don't think makes it to 98. Oronde Gadsden would. Zabel, if you were banking on him being there at 48, I think you got to hold your breath a little bit now. And Josh Connerly will be going by probably the top 25 picks. Kenneth Grant's probably top 20 selection. Darius Alexander's played himself, I think, probably at minimum into a fringe 2nd-round type player, so you're going to get 2 bites of the apple at him. Shamar Stewart's going to be a top 20 pick. Jared Ivey, I'd put in the same bucket as Darius Alexander. Like, if you told me he went in the 70s in the actual draft, I wouldn't be surprised, but that means he's going to be on the board for you twice when you make picks. Linebacker, like running back, is a devalued position. And safety is the other devalued position. So those are the 3 spots. And the good news is, like, Miami has needs at those 3 spots. And I think there's going to be quality options that you would have a 3rd bite at the apple for. But then corner, Hairston, Daniel Jeremiah's got him in his top 50 prospects. Shavon Revel, I think, authentically is a top 20 player in the class, top 15 player in the class just based off his talent. You have to factor in the medicals, but that's not going to put him there for you at 98. So you get this gap from 48 to 98. That's 50 picks. That's the sweet spot of the draft. And I just really wanted to drive that home. There's a lot of names that I really like. And the vast majority of them, you're probably not going to get a 3rd swing of the bat on. So at best, you're picking 2. In addition to the talent pool that was not here at these events. It's going to do it for us here today on the show. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team. Every day you can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. Appreciate you guys as always. Come on back. See me again on Monday. Go Fins. I'm out of here.